How's it going, everyone? KingBlackToof here. So today I want to talk specifically about the two new leader cards that we saw revealed in the third batch. So this would be the Whispering Hillock for monsters, as well as Adda for Northern Realms. So my initial impression is that they are interesting and they are unique. These are words which probably don't give my full, don't tell you what it means, but I think they're good. I think it's nice to have something like this card in there. I think that since we've got, is it 4 leaders already, a 5th leader, which is a bit more adaptable, is a nice thing. Now they do have their issues, but I'm going to be going through in this video the pros of the particular cards, the cons of the card, what are their issues. I'm going to show you all the cards that they can play. It's very important to actually look at the cards they can play and not just try and remember what organic cards they can play, what cursed units they can play, to really give a good detailed idea of how good that particular card could be. And at the end we'll do some tests. I've got a method to do some discover tests, and I think it'll be a fun experience to just have a look to see what you could possibly get, what kind of ideas you could get from this sort of thing. So let's have a look, shall we? So let's have a quick look at the 2 lead cards that we're going to be talking about today. Okay, because I think the pros and cons of both of them are very similar. So the Whispering Hillock is a relic leader card, which is nice for things like the Fiend. Hopefully it means that this always counts as a relic in your hand until after you've played it. So you can't really mess up the Fiends in that way, which would be nice. It spawns an organic card and is 6 strength itself. 6 strength is about average. There's quite a variety of organic cards, and we'll go into those later. But let's have a look at Adda. So Adda is a cursed leader card for Northern Realms. Northern Realms got a lot of cursed units. It spawns a bronze or silver cursed unit. Now this seemingly is faction, not faction limited. So Adda is a cursed leader. Again, she's 6 strength. She spawns a bronze or silver cursed unit. Now Northern Realms has a lot of cursed unit, but it doesn't seem to be limited to a particular faction. So I'd say every faction seems to have cursed units now. Skellig is going to be the most primary source, as well as Northern Realms. But you could get some neutral cursed with Nivellen and stuff, and we'll go over those later, what possible things you could get. But there are a couple of issues with things with both of these cards that I think is general. So the first issue is, first of all, the scope of the spawn. Now I think Adda is worse than the Whispering Hillock, just for the fact that I think cursed units is so broad, and the fact it's bronze and silver is so broad that it's going to be a lot more inconsistent. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that the choices are bad. If a lot of the choices are good, then it means that it's inconsistent, but it's good choices. But if you've got some really bad cursed units that are into the mix that really don't help you a lot of the time because you can't really use them as Northern Realms, then it's going to cause an issue. Now the Whispering Hillock with organic cards is slightly less scope. It's still a reasonable scope, but it's less, so it's more confined. This is one of the main reasons why a lot of people consider Winch as one of the better spawn cards. The Winch is a bronze Northern Realms tactic card, which spawns a bronze Northern Realms machine and boosts it by 2. Now this is considered a decent card because the scope is relatively small. You're looking at about 7 Northern Realms machines at the minute, which are bronze. And, if you're building a Northern Realms machine deck, then you're probably going to use at least 2, maybe 3 machines in that particular deck. Because you're not really playing this as a one-off card. You're playing it as synergy with Henselt or Reaver Scouts. You want to be able to expand upon this card. So the thing is the larger the scope gets, probably the worse this card becomes. And it's not because like the card that gets introduced, the next Northern Realm machine that comes out, is a bad card. It could be a great card, but it means that you're less likely to get the card you want when you've gone up to 3 out of 8 and 3 out of 9 and 3 out of 10 chances to get the card you want. It means you don't get any synergy with Henselt and the Reaver Scouts, so you're less likely to actually be worth playing it, because playing it as a one-off card is not usually a great thing to do. In this case it could be quite good because well, you might have crewmen down there already, and then you've got the really great instances where you get a really good Henselt. But The scope getting bigger means generally things get worse. So the next issue with both the leader cards is, when do you play it? Because you don't quite know what you're going to get presented with the three options. You don't know when you want to play it. And because sometimes you might want to play it early, sometimes you might want to play it late, but you might not get the options presented that works well in that scenario. I had a great instance of this when I was playing Monster Deck a while ago with Gells. I had 2 golds left and I had Gells in my hand. I could play Gells and it will present me with either Woodland Spirit or Geralt Ard. Now, Woodland Spirit I wanted to play very early in the round to get the weather tick and get the value from that. But Geralt Ard I want to play towards the end of the round to push loads of units back onto a single row, ready for a lacerate. So I was stuck into a situation where I didn't know when to play Gells because it was 50-50 chance for me. Do I play it early and risk getting Geralt Ard? Do I play it late and risk getting Woodland Spirit? And really this kind of happens with these leader cards. Like Adda here, for example, you could get Morkvarg or Olgierd, which is ideally played in round 1. Probably you could play it late into round 1 if it goes really long. But most of the time you want to play it quite early in round 1 and get that carryover ready. However, you may get something like Iris, and that is not something you want to play in early round 1. You want to play that into late round 3 or late round 1 to clinch it. Now, you do get a choice with these cards, so that's interesting. But if you get presented with Iris and you're in early round 1, it would probably feel quite bad that you didn't want to do it. Obviously, the choice is there for you. If you've set up the weather, then you can do it. You probably won't ever be stuck with an option, but you probably won't get maximum value from this card all the time, which is one of the issues. So I think it's probably best if we look at the type of cards that each leader can spawn so that we get an idea of what is the range of cards and do they group together well. So I mean, like, have we got a lot of cards that are really nice to use in round 1 and we've got a lot of nice cards that are great to use in round 3, and how do they group well together and stuff like that. So first, let's go on to Whispering Hillock and its ability to spawn organic cards. Now, most of those are already in the game, but we have seen a couple being revealed, and we may get a few more before it's over. So let's look at these ones first. So the first one is Boulder. Now, this is the special card which does 7 damage and moves an enemy back, but if the row is full, it destroys it. Now, usually this probably won't be taken. 7 damage is probably not much nowadays. There's much more value with other cards to come, but maybe it's a nice choice to have if they do have a full row. We don't quite know how easy it is to get a full row yet. We don't know the row limits, so it's hard to judge this particular one. But you've got Drowners, you've got other boulders to move cards back, you've got Geralt Ard and stuff like that. So maybe it's possible to make them stack and then push something really big back. But most of the time, I think you'll probably just skip this one. And only take this will be a choice if it works out into the row thing. You won't take this unless they have a full row. So most of the time this one will be skipped. So the next organic card is the Parasite. Now this is basically Manticore's Venom, but with a little extra flexibility, and Manticore Venom is in the list as well. So you can deal 12 damage to an enemy, or you can boost an ally by 12. Now, the fact that it's choice means that it won't ever be bad. Now this has got an issue in that if you want to remove something like an Imperial Brigade before it manages to get over 12, you'll have to risk Adda and try and get this card, or Manticore Venom. So this becomes an issue where you can just do it later in the game and just do 12 value plus the 6, that's 18, which is nice. But if you really want to get the value out of it, you've got to do a little bit of a risk on this card and try and get the removal before it gets out of control. So there is a little inherent risk on this card, which is worth noting. So these are all the organic cards that are currently in the game, and there's no limit to what the Whispering Hillock can play in terms of bronze, silver, or gold. And I think this gives us a great idea of what could actually be presented to us. We've got Adrenaline Rush. This is something which I think is not going to be choosed, or from the particular list. I think, well, I mean, you've got enough carryover with Harpies, you've got some Ekimaras. I think you're not really going for big carryover, I would say. That's not a thing nowadays. It's just enough carryover so you don't get dry passed, and I think you're probably not going to play your Whispering Hillock in round 2, so I think this will be a card which is not chosen very much. Mardrum is a nice choice. I mean, we don't quite know how it's going to play out in the next patch with cards like Geralt Erden coming in, which eliminates all buffs and all tokens. Alongside the Adrenaline Rush from earlier, I think we might see a paradigm shift away from buffs a bit more because that card exists. So this may not be too useful, but in the current state it would be useful. So this could be a good card which could get a nice amount of value. Lacerate is generally always considered a good card. This would indicate that you play it towards the end of the game. You know, the end of a round or at the end of the final round. Now, that's generally easy to do. I think if we played the previous card at the end of the game, that would also be the best fitting for it. This doesn't seem like a card that you would ever use to try and heal a unit, because that would require you to know what you're getting. But you'll mostly use this to eliminate buffs from a card later on. And the same goes with this. You'll just get value out of it. End of the round, you play Whispering Hillock, you get a Lacerate. That's good value, hopefully. Depends how many units are on a row. I could see people trying to Drowner and then get a Lacerate, but I think if you're going into Whispering Hillock looking for Lacerate, you're going to be disappointed more often than not. So Blood Curdling Roar is going to usually be about 10 strength because you have to destroy a 1 strength minion. I don't think you'll take it too often unless you're running Harpies, in which case the value of this card raises a bit. With Harpies, it turns it into a 14 value card, which for the Whispering Hillock is slightly higher than average, with the exception of Lacerate, which could be worth a lot more. And I guess the question is, are you going to take Harpies in a Whispering Hillock deck? Now, some decks like Consume will always take Unseen Elder at the moment. Frost will probably always take Eredin. So, I mean, the Moonlight archetype might be, you know, with Alpha Werewolves and stuff like that, might take Whispering Hillock. And the Alpha Werewolves do spawn 2 1-strength wolves, which are assumed a beast cards if they're in Moonlight. So there is potential with this card with those particular style of play. So I think it won't be taken too often, but if you're running Harpies, then it's an excellent choice. There are some definitely better choices than this if you're not running Harpies, though. Araka's Venom, again, this is a late game thing. Just going to be 12 value if you can maximum, which is okay. Now, again, I don't think you're going to be trying to use this as pure removal. Obviously, this and Lacerate kind of go into the same area where if there's something of 3 or 4 value, you can try and remove it. But I think this, again, is just a late game play. Crow's Eye, another late game play, also 12 value. Probably not going to lose value on this unless you start weathering and they avoid the row. But with a bit of Drowner help, maybe you would always get value from this. So just another 12 value that you could possibly get. Unless you've built your deck in such a way that you play a lot of Crow's Eye before, then it increases in value as you play it. But I don't think we've seen that type of monster card deck appearing. So most likely it'll just be 12 value. Manticore Venom, same as the Parasite, except for the Parasite's got more flexibility, but for the most part, it's just 12 value again. Now, this has got the issue of you're probably just going to use it as 12 value. I mean, all the cards we've seen so far are mostly end game things. This has the potential of being good removal. So you could see an Imperial Brigade hit the floor, 10 strength. You think, okay, I'm going to go for Manticore Venom or Parasite and take that out, which is worth more than 12 value. But then you start running into things like Lacerate and Araka's Venom and Crow's Eye, and you lose a lot of value. So to try and minimize the loss of the Whispering Hillock, you'll probably be playing it at the end of the game and trying to just go for pure value, which will be 12 here plus the 6, so 18, which is not bad. You know, it's quite high. Monster Nest is a great card for monsters to get. It's really good. I mean, there's nothing here apart from really Ancient Foglets, but I don't think they'll be played unless they're changed. Ghoul could be used, sorry. Drowner could be used. I think they're probably the main ones. Drowner and Ghoul. And, you know, again, they're late game plays, really. Drowner could be a little earlier than late game. If you have weather and you want it to keep ticking, there's nothing in the row. But most of the time you'll have other drowners. You'll have weather with things in there. So usually this is just a nice... Again, it's 12 value though, isn't it? Unless the Ghoul can eat something slightly bigger. The Drowner is 12 value because it's worth 9 and then it buffs by 3. So again, it's looking good. But again, it's just about 12 value-ish, which is 18 with the leader card. The Mandrake is very similar to Mardrum, in which we don't know where the meta is going to set in terms of buffing, with cards existing like Geralt Erden and stuff like that. So you probably won't take this one unless it's really this is a choice one, but it is an end game choice one again. So it's looking like the Whispering Hillock is very good at the end game. Now Wolfsbane is not an end game one, definitely not. It's not a bad card, but really it is. Okay, because well, if you get it at the end of the game, like you've only got one card left, you can't choose this. It's not going to be ruining your hand because you've got another 2 choices to choose from. But again, this is just 12 value again, and you know the opponent can block this with armor. They could block it with, you know, Quen, something like that. So it's just probably not a great one to choose, honestly. I think, yeah, I think you'd choose something which does value instantly, or it might be able to, and you get to choose the target too, rather than the opponent dictating that. So you probably won't choose this one. If you use Whispering Hillock in the end of round 1, then you might choose it to try and get some shenanigans going. But even then, it's hard for Skellige when they time it. So I think this is just not going to be one that's chosen. Now, most of the value of the cards were about 12. I mean, you got Lacerate and stuff, which could be a slightly more, but it could be slightly less. So average, I would say 12 without any outside help. So, I mean, the Whispering Hillock is going to be about 18 strength, and it seems to lend itself towards an end game play. There seems to be a little flexibility, but nothing really is going to go, wow, I'm going to win the game so easily with this card, which actually is a good thing. It means that it's not going to be ruining Constructed as much because you've not got the 1 in 5 chance where you get amazing, I've won the game, you know, like Scorch, for example. This is just going to be probably about an 18 strength card. You could run the risk of using it earlier, maybe go for Adrenaline Rush or Manticore or Parasite to get that removal, but most of the time I think you'll just go for the end of game. The scope is medium. I would say the scope is quite big, you know. You get 3 choice, so you know it's about 1 in 4-ish. The thing is, most of them lend themselves to the same sort of style of play that it really doesn't matter with the card. So we can evaluate it as about 18 strength and not a bad card. Now I don't think it's bad this card exists. I think it's a nice, interesting idea, and it seems to be relatively consistent for the 18 value that I mentioned earlier. Now the next card, Adda, this is the cursed leader. So we're looking at cursed units. Now there's a lot of synergy with cursed units. We saw the cursed knight now, which is a really nice, interesting one, and we saw tormented mage, and we saw the damned sorceress, which needs a cursed unit to be on the board. Now we're going to look at all the cards that are cursed currently that it can choose. Now there's a lot of faction cards on different factions that this can choose from. So this one is probably, I would say, worse than the Whispering Hillock because the scope is a lot wider and the use for these cards is probably a lot narrower, whereas the Whispering Hillock seem to be, you know, all tend to be the same sort of play. This doesn't seem to work that way. And there's probably definitely going to be more cursed units coming through. So let's have a quick look. There's been a lot already in the game, and there's also a lot been revealed, so we'll just go through them as we do. The first cursed unit we come across is a neutral one, 10 strength loyal Nivellen, and you select a row and move all units on that row to random rows on its side. So you can do it on the opponent's or your side. Now Northern Realms doesn't have any synergy with that. They don't have a Dolbafan and Marksman. So unless you're moving them from a row which is not weathered to a weathered row, there's not an awful lot of synergy. There might be some sort of movement impairing thing that you want to do. So if like they're trying to line up for something or something buffs adjacent units, you can try and move them away, but I don't think it's very consistent, and this would mostly just be a 16-point play with the leader card. So the next card we come across is the cursed unit Werewolf from Monsters. This is the immune 7 strength that strengthens himself by another 7 in contact with Moonlight. Now this is very conditional. You're probably not going to choose this. In fact, Moonlight is a monster only card, so you're not going to be able to do it yourself. However, you know, if the opponent's playing Moonlight, if it played on your side, you could play this card to sort of try and stop that a bit. But generally speaking, I think you'll try and pass this guy by most of the time because you won't get the value from the Moonlight. We also have the Alpha Werewolf, who is much in the same position. Not too bad. You only lose 2 strength if he's not in Moonlight, a 10 strength bronze, which again makes Adda a 16-point play. Very basic 16-point play. So next we've got the Cursed Silver Monster card, Strigger. 5 strength, deal 8 damage to a non-monster unit. So this is a card which is used for removing those engine cards, not for pure value. So you're having to play Adda in a way, after the opponent's played a engine card, you have to play Adda and just kind of hope. Now, the scope of this card is quite big, so it's very unlikely that you want to play this card in that sort of way. So probably a card which should be okay, but very rare you're going to get it in the optimal sense. Now, Ruhin here is a cursed monster as well. 8 strength is okay. Strengthen all of your insectoid and cursed units wherever they are. Now, this could be a great card if you're running a Northern Realms cursed deck. A lot of Tormented Mage, a lot of Damned Sorceresses, a lot of Cursed Knights. You know, this is a good card to get. This is a great card. Now, Insectoid you can kind of leave on the side, but Cursed could be quite good in a Northern Realms cursed deck. So this is a very good card. It's basically Dennis Kramer of monsters, which if you apply to Northern Realms could do quite well. So this would be a card that you'd want to play early though. You'd want to play this as one of the earlier game plays like Dennis Kramer does to strengthen everything before you put it down. I don't know if there's any synergies with putting things down first because they spawn. The Cursed Knight won't actually lose any value because you'll strengthen the Tormented Mage, but you'll also strengthen the Cursed Knight, so it'll be the same value. Just 1 strength higher across the board. So this is a good card, but it's an early game card, and other things have sort of indicated that it's not too early. I mean, the Strigger, I mean, you could go for a bit of a risk. They play an engine card, play it, decide what you want to do at that point. So at the minute it's looking like there's quite a few conditional things, but it might be worth a risk early on to try and go for something good. So you could get access to all the Northern Realms curse units that you would probably stick in the deck as it is, like Tormented Mage. If you've got any bronze spells left in there or items, then you could go for it. Probably not something you'd want. If you're trying to go for more value that actually is more important. I think you'll probably get these out easily by themselves anyway, but you know, the option is there and the option is not a bad one. This would probably likely played at any time during the game. So this is a safe bet. Really, as long as you've got more than 3 bronze spells or items so that the Tormented Mage is never dead, then it's a safe bet all over the place. But if you have only got 3, then it would be a bad choice to get. So the Damned Sorceress, another decent play very early on in the game. You just need to make sure you set it up with a cursed unit on the board. In fact, Adda is a cursed unit, so you can play this whenever you want. And, you know, 7 strength removal could be quite good. So this lends to the opponent plays an engine card. Throw down Adda and see if you can get a removal like Strigger or get a removal like Damned Sorceress, for example. I mean, the Tormented Mage, you could pull an item card, which could be the Spear from above, which could also be used as a removal. So there's a lot of early game removal options with Adda, which could be quite good. The Cursed Knight, this requires a little bit of a setup. You don't want to really transform Adda because she's 6 strength, so you might need to just be a little bit safe with this guy by placing a Cursed Tormented Mage on the board first, which would enable this guy to get polymaximum value. But again, I mean, you'll have other options. So, I mean, if you do this and you really don't feel like you're going to get good value from it, you can pick something else. The Vincent is another Cursed Silver from Northern Realms. Probably a bad one, very bad one. I mean, you have to be playing the armor archetype for this guy to be viable. So I think, I mean, actually, you could be playing against the armor archetype. You could be playing, the opponent could be playing the armor archetype and you play him. But most of the time, I think he's going to be a void. Just never choose him unless you're playing that particular deck or playing against that particular deck. Now, the question is the armor type going to get any benefit from using Adda? And by the looks of things, with the cursed units, not really. We're going to go for something, I think cursed archetype fits her a lot better. So probably always going to be a voided one. Just don't take it, usually. Unless the matchup is specifically good for you to do so. But most of the time, they don't just leave armor on the board waiting to be taken. So probably not going to get massive value from him, even though the option is presented to you. So we've got an interesting card here, Darren. This would lend himself to an early game play as well. Although maybe a mid-game play, because I think he would just get removed if you played him too early. But he's a cursed Skellige unit, and whenever an enemy is damaged, boost this unit by 1. So if you're playing a very Northern Realms machine deck, especially the machines that do damage to units which are equal, you know, you could get insane value from this guy, absolutely insane. There's a lot of issues, though, that probably mean that you won't actually do this. The first one being, if you're playing a machine's sort of archetype, you're probably going to choose Hensel, not Adda. So that just kind of blows that idea out the water there. You've also got the issue of leveling could be difficult and removal is possible and stuff like that. So I think with the cursed archetype we've seen so far, there's a little bit of removal, probably not enough to warrant this guy being on the board unless you want to bait the removal, because people will remove this. So if you've got another card which is really important to keep alive, then you could play this in hopes that they waste a removal on him. If you're playing Weather, this guy will work quite well with that as well. Obviously, we've got, as Northern Realms, we've got Vandergrift, which creates the whole thing, which would work amazingly well with this guy. If you're not sure what Vandergrift does, another cursed Northern Realms unit, damage all enemies by 1. Fuck, you know. If a unit is destroyed, apply Ragnarok to its row. So, you know, a free gold Weather, Stammelford, Darren goes to billions. Vandergrift kind of is a late game play. It'd probably be hard to keep Darren alive, and that's one of the negatives too. Darren is probably considered a mid game play, so he's not instantly removed, and you've got a bit of board set up ready to do damage. But okay, so there's some nice. It's a nice idea. I think, you know, I feel like he is a very vulnerable card though. So there, all the curse units have been revealed, and we'll no doubt get a couple more. But the curse units in the game are mostly applied to Skellige, I would say. But there are some good options. Now, Necromancy is a cursed item. You can't pull items with Adda, so this is not going to be a choice for you. Archerspore is, I mean, it's okay. It means it's 11 strength straight away, and obviously gets pinged around. It is a nice target. People aim at this card, and then you get +4 more. So this again signifies a very early game play. So Adda's looking to be a very early style of leader card to play. Try and get, when they play an engine card, try and get that removal. If you can't, go for some other things which will gain value over time, which is nice. The Raging Berserker, I don't see this one being very good for you. You do have a Resurrect in the future for 12 strength, but there didn't seem like a main way that you could damage this card. So most likely this is not going to be a choice for you, I don't think. Savage Bear, again, early game play if you just want to try and get some value. Now, don't forget, any of these cards could change. So these are just based on what we know right now. But yeah, so another early game play for Adda to try and get some value. Baits a little bit of removal as well, seemingly. Berserker Marauder, this is a late game play. Now, Northern Realms could have a lot of cursed units. They could be wounded. Probably won't be that easy to do so. You probably won't be aiming for that. Like Skellige might be aiming to wound their own units with Stammelford as part of their whole game plan for this guy. But if like you are struggling, I don't think this guy is going to work, because if the opponent is wounding you, they're not going to just leave you alive. I think things are going to die, and this guy's not going to get up too high a value. Unless you play a Stammelford, I just don't think you'll choose this guy very often. To be honest. But then again, if you're playing against the cursed Skellige deck, which have Stammels and Yennefer and things like that to actually prepare it for themselves, they're also preparing it for you. So the option is there for you, which is okay, because you'll have a lot of cursed units probably, and you'll have a lot of wounded cursed units and wounded units. However, again, it's a late game play, which so far goes against the grain of what we've seen about Adda. Iris. Oh boy, really nice card here. But again, signifies an end game play. So at the minute, it goes against the grain. Definitely some ways that you could remove this. I think there's plenty of ways you could do that. So it's definitely a viable option, but only towards the end of the game. If you do it early on in the game, you probably won't have enough units on the board. And also, the opponent has more likely ways to stop it. Toad Prince is not a bad card to get. I mean, if you need to rejigger something in your hand. So not a bad card to get indeed. So this is great utility, this one, which is pretty good. Skull, not a bad card at all. Really not a bad card. Because it works in Northern Realms with cursed units. Again, this could be played at any time. This is going to be a nice card to see, just as a safety net at all times, I would say, unless you're massively good at thinning your deck. So this is a great card just in general. It means you'll get 6 from Adda, 5 from Skull, and let's say 14 from a Cursed Knight is a nice value. I mean, that's like 25 strength there. That's pretty good. Requires another unit on the board for Cursed Knight, but you know, good. A good card. Excellent card to get. Great one to see as a nice bit of safety. Nothing too risky on this one because you'll build your deck with cursed units anyway. Terrible card to get most likely unless it's changed. I think a lot of people think Botchling and Lubbokin should be changed in some manner, but for now you're probably not going to put Botchling or Lubbokin in your deck. If you do, because it may turn out that that's a cool idea, you know, bait removal in some other ways, place these down, it means that your Lubbokin will be insanely strong. Which is really nice. Now, if you put the Lubbokin on the board and then you got a Botchling from Adda, that would start to complicate things, really. But generally speaking, I think I'm trying to meme too much. In the current state of Botchling and Lubbokin, not good card to see. Not good card to see. Howard Houndsnout, again, great card to see. You know, this is going to be another one of those particular cards which is going to do really well for you. Providing you can get that bronze curse unit killed, that Wilmar killed, then you can get another bronze curse unit. So it's just as good as Skull. A little bit more requirement. You're going to need some wounding, which is not normally too difficult in Northern Realms, although a lot of the wounding that we've seen in the cursed archetype is more than 1. It seems to be like 7 from a damn sorceress. It seems to be, you know, a spear from the mage. So quite a difficult card. Excellent options for the cursed knight though. Transforming something like Wilfred or Wilhelm, or if you can't activate them, you can curse knight them, which would be really, really nice. Olgierd, a great card early on. Same with Howard Houndsnout there. Great card early on. Obviously, he's better later on because you'll get the value from the wounding, but it's not a massive deal if you can't. So he's a great card early on, which is not bad. Yep. Same for Morkvarg early on play. Udalric, this is going to be a bit of a dangerous one. You don't know whether you want to play him. He's always awkward to play. But you can make your own, you know, options with this guy. So I don't think you'll be playing Adda in like round 2 where you can get Udalric. So you'll be playing it into a round that most likely you want to win, which is scary, you know. So just be careful about this one. You also don't really want to discard a lot of cards from your deck, but it is an option, and I'm sure people will take it sometimes, which is nice. They're all the cards that are in the game, as well as the ones that have been revealed so far. No doubt we'll get more, but for now, the scope is quite huge, and we've seen some very good ones, and we see some chaff ones, not ones that are going to be massively overpowered. You know, we're not getting Vandergrift or something crazy, but Skull was definitely one of the easier, nicer ones, a nice high play, get something as well. So I think she can be quite good if played kind of right. A lot of the cards seem to indicate that you'd play her very early after the opponent's played something that possibly you want to try and get rid of. You play Adda, try and go for Strigger, try and go for, you know, Damned Sorceress or something like that. Failing that, you could try and go for some carryover like Morkvarg or Olgierd, or failing that, you could try and go for some damage over time, things like Archer Spore. Or if you wanted to, you can try and go against the grain and try and play something late game, see if you can get a Berserker Marauder or possibly Iris to go for. So her value, because of the gulf, it's quite hard to pinpoint. I'm sure there are instances where she could just be 12 strength with Botchling, Lubbokin, Rage and Berserker, those types of things. Upper value is about 25 with Skull into something good from your deck. But also, if you're looking at 2 card plays, so Adda and another card, we could see upwards of like 31 points with Iris, providing you can kill it and it stays on the board. You know, things like that. So, or Howard Hound Snout, which could do a little bit more value towards the end. Now, one of the main negatives on her over Whispering Hillock is the scope. There was a lot of cards there that we went through. So that really brings me on to the next thing we're going to do, and I'm going to put that in the next video. I'm going to split them up. This one's getting a bit long. But we're going to emulate Adda and Whispering Hillock, and we're going to emulate their spawn, their create abilities. So we're going to simulate drawing 3 random cards out of their collective pool, and we'll just discuss on basically how are the choices. I mean, how often am I getting something that's bad, but it's being supplemented by okay things? And how often am I getting something which is really bad for me? How often am I getting things which are going to be aimed at the start of the round, end of the round, that type of thing? And I think it's just a great way of sort of simulating the kind of feel these leader cards could get, and what is the average value I'm getting from those particular cards. And I've already recorded this, and I think it's a great thing. So I hope you'll watch that. But for now, we're going to end the video here, because I think we've discussed the 2 cards. We've shown quite a lot of interesting aspects to them. So next thing we're going to do is simulate their discover mechanic, and I hope you'll join me on that. Thank you for watching. Take care. I'll see you again very soon.